Hi, we finally come to the end of the long journey that began in Genesis 26:34, where Jacob will be beyond his way to Laban in the old country to find a woman and to escape from his brother Esau. As we've been looking at, we're following the chiasm, as you can see on the right side of the screen, that follows the entire Jacob cycle. We've been in the purple section here that's parallel with the purple section here, and also at the end of this first unit of the Jacob and Esau section, which will be matched on the other side, and we're about to enter into the Jacob and Laban section here. And as we've been looking at the key words throughout here, finally we're in this section here where Isaac and Jacob are together, and we see the issue of blessing again, and mother's father and mother's brother here. And what we'll also look at is the issue of the blessing of Abraham, which Isaac wishes for his son Jacob, which underscores the fact that the paternal blessing was not the blessing of Abraham, was therefore not Yahweh or Elohim's blessing, but simply a paternal blessing. And as we've been looking at the questionable assumptions that many scholars engage in throughout this section, we've been focusing here on the issue of whether the sending back to the old country is an emergency expedient because of Esau's anger rather than the plan all along. And as we'll see, whereas Rebekah's description of the need to go in the previous video, in the last verses, was to escape the murderous wrath of Esau, here Isaac, seemingly knowing nothing about that, will send Jacob to get a woman from his mother's family, which is of course also his family, as we'll see. So different reasons. Some scholars see that as different sources, but we don't need to do that here at all. We can just follow it as it is as part of the drama. So Isaac is calling Jacob after the previous verse when Rebekah said to Isaac that her life is miserable because of the Canaanite women, the Hittite women that Esau has chosen, such as these. So Isaac by himself calls Jacob. This is the first time that Isaac is talking directly to Jacob in this situation after he has stolen the blessing, and yet there seems to be no animosity and no problem. No sense that Isaac is upset about it, and that really underscores the sense that I've been suggesting all along, that Isaac was in on the plan with Rebekah to get Jacob to supposedly trick him for the blessing, but not really a trick at all. The conspiracy, as we've seen, is at least as much on Jacob by his parents to prepare him for what's coming, to encounter the trickster Laban in the old country. So he blesses him again and charged him, using a word here that recalls Rebekah at 27:8. We can look back at there to obey the words that I command here. And now it's his father who commands him. You shall not marry, and literally it's take. There is no word for marry in Hebrew. Similarly, there's no word for wife, as we see here, simply the word for woman. So his reason is not to escape Esau, who's not mentioned here, but to deal with the fact that Rebekah's life is made miserable by the Hittite wives. As Westerman notes below, the prohibition in this lapidary form against taking a Canaanite wife can have arisen only in a period when mixed marriages threaten the purity of the community and the religion, which is to highlight that he's still seeing this as somehow connected with an original form that was historical, and we don't need to do that. In fact, as my note continues below, in the Persian period, it can be seen as undermining the Ezra-Nehemiah perspective, given the positive outcomes of Esau's Canaanite marriages, which we looked at earlier, which is to say, in the exilic and post-exilic period, it's marrying foreign women that is deemed the cause of the exile, but Genesis doesn't seem to know anything about that, because as I showed earlier, many of the people in Genesis that are Israelites later marry others, including Judah himself, as we see later in chapter 38. So you should not take one of the Canaanite women. And notice it's Canaanite here, not Hittite as earlier. Canaanite to Hittite is as Indian is to Cherokee. The Canaanite is the broad category for the people of the land, and Hittite is a specific term. So he's speaking more broadly here. Don't marry any of the locals here. But instead, he says this: go at once. Notice that there's still a hurry involved. Literally, stand up and go, similar to what we heard earlier about Rebekah's call to him, and go to Paddan-aram. And so when we bring up the atlas, we can see that whereas Rebekah said to go to Haran, the town here, Isaac says to go to Paddan-aram, which is roughly the same area, but just spoken of more broadly. And again, that's something that scholars who see sources want to parse there, but there's no need to, as far as I can tell. To the house of Bethel, your mother's father. And as we looked at last time, worth looking at again here, they're all related. They're related to Isaac as well. So he highlights the mother's father here, but he is also connected to them. So this was her plan, and he's going along with it here. Again, as I noted last time, he could have sent him to Ishmael if they knew where Ishmael was. Maybe they don't. So take as wife from there, woman from there, one of the daughters of Laban. How does he know that Laban has daughters? It's just a presumption that he does. They've been gone for a long time here, and although Isaac got this wife from there, he didn't go back there, and it's been 20 years. So we don't know anything about that. Rebekah is Laban's sister, and we don't know anything about daughters, but of course there will be daughters. So then he offers this extra blessing. And to look at that, we need to compare the blessing that God gave to Abraham in chapter 17, Abram and then becoming Abraham there. So we can look at it either on the left side and look at it on the right side, but on the right side you can see I've color coordinated the parts that are similar and highlighting that what Isaac is saying, may he give you the blessing of Abraham, which is exactly what this is here. But notice what's omitted. 4 times in here is this issue of covenant in chapter 17, and there is no covenant in Isaac's summary and wish, and no covenant between Yahweh or Elohim and Jacob is ever narrated in Genesis. So we don't see that. The only covenant that Jacob will enter into is the one in Laban as a border agreement there when he leaves. So notice it's not either Yahweh or Elohim as such, it's El Shaddai here, which we saw exactly here in 17:1. So it's echoing that, although Isaac didn't hear that. We have to presume that Isaac knows that because his father told him. How else would he know? Make you fruitful and numerous, again echoing as we saw there, and using this phrase, maybe become a company of people, using the word quahal, which is interesting. The word for the company of Israel as a religious community throughout the Hebrew Bible. So when they're gathered for liturgy or worship, they're referred to as a quahal. But here it's echoing in a little different language what the promise was to Abraham, to be a father of a multitude of nations. And so again, both of these may he. So it's not that Isaac is presuming that he can offer it, but he's making the wish that God will offer the blessing of Abraham. And that really underscores the point that what was offered before was not the blessing of Abraham. This is the only time that Isaac ever mentions his father by name, and contrary to almost all speakers, doesn't say Father Abraham, as we saw so many times in chapter 26, and we'll see in chapter 32. It's as if to say that Isaac never got the blessing except in the sense of material wealth, so maybe Jacob will. But Isaac is certainly doing okay, so there's a question of what the blessing means if we think that Isaac didn't get it. So it's may he give it to you and to your offspring, your seed with you, so that you may take possession of the land where you now live as an alien. Echoing again exactly this, I will give you to you and your offspring after the land where you now live as an alien, all the land of Canaan for a perpetual holding, using the language that we saw in chapter 23 for buying the cave of Machpelah and the land there. That gave them a perpetual holding. So that's the only piece of it they actually have a perpetual holding, but here's the hope that all the land will be given there. And living as an alien, as a Magur, as Hagar was, as a foreigner in the land. But the land that God gave to Abraham. So it's given, and yet they're still living there, not as local people here. So we need to go one more verse down to see how this completes here. And notice that it's Isaac doing it here. There's no Rebekah involved. And as my note below says, why don't they provide him the prize packages which to woo Rachel and placate Laban as Abraham did? We recall from chapter 24 that when Abraham sent his servant out, he sent 10 camels and gold and jewelry and all kinds of things. And Laban saw that as blessed are you of Yahweh because of all the wealth, interpreting that as a Mesopotamian, that material wealth was blessing as opposed to fertility of body and land was blessing. But they understood the old country because Rebekah was from there and Abraham was from there, so he knew what it was all about. But they send him off completely empty-handed. And it's really unimaginable that he sends, as I looked at last time, but again, here it happens, the smooth tent-dwelling Isaac to a land he's never been to, so many 900 kilometers away. And we're told simply that it happens. He went with no consequence, although we'll see in chapter 28 there's at least one experience along the way. But no robbers and no hunger and no sleeplessness and no seemingly problems for this mama's boy and tent dweller to go the entire distance. And he went to Paddan-aram to Laban, son of Bethuel, and here we hear the Aramaean. We heard that earlier around, we can look at it back there in 25:20, framing the whole business when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramaean of Paddan-aram, sister of Laban, the Aramaean. So framing the entire unit here from the beginning of the Jacob story there, highlighting the brother of Rebekah that we've already heard a number of times, but ending on this interesting note, Jacob's and Esau's mother. And we noted in the previous scene that Rebekah referred to, or at least the narrator referred to Rebekah's perception of Esau as the great son and Jacob as the small son, but simply now she is the mother of both. And it's the only time we really hear this, subject to her giving birth to them, that she's claiming them both. And so Jacob goes off now and is going to experience many adventures. I won't go through the last part of this because we looked at it earlier in framing our whole story. So the unit is now ended, and Jacob will now have to find his way in the face of trickster Laban and figure out how to do that. And it's going to take him 20 years to do that. We'll continue with that next time. See you then. Bye-bye.